You want the whole song? Okay, good morning. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Frank from State of Flux, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the 2025 Supply Management Summit, where we'll launch the 17th SRM Research Report. We're thrilled to have you all here as we come together to explore a theme that is key to our success, from customer of choice to customer delight. We're exploring the impacts that extends beyond procurement, where being customer of choice is not a destination, but foundation for delighting the end customer. When we delight customers, we don't just win business, we build loyalty, advocacy, sustainable growth across our ecosystem. Over today's session, we dive into best practices, share insights, and challenge ourselves to think differently. Before formal proceedings, I'd like to welcome Neil Whitman-Gritz from Telstra, who do the stage welcome and our welcome to country. Can you welcome Neil to stage? Thank you.
Test. Awesome. And thank you so much, Frank. Good morning and welcome, and especially a warm welcome to Telstra. My name is Neil Whitman-Griggs and lead our strategic partnerships for the enterprise part of our business here in Telstra. We're delighted to once again host the forum in partnership with the State of Flux, and also incredibly excited to listen to this year's research. I love this year's theme, focused on customer delight to customer success. And I'll admit, I've had a sneak peek of the research, and it is absolutely packed with awesome and inspiring insights and research in there. So Alan and team, you've done it again. At Telstra, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the traditional custodians of the land of which we meet here today, and we recognise their elders, both past, present and emerging. And so to begin, we will like to start with a short video. Thank you.
We acknowledge the lands, waterways and sky country across our horizons.
From the lands of the Dharug, Dharawal and the Gadigal, the Sunrise people in the east.
The Mirning Whale Keepers of the south, to the desert sands of the Ananu and Arunta.
The Kukiyawanji Yirinji of the tropics to the Gulf country of the Wanya.
The Miriam of the Torres Straits.
The Gumach, from the Yulmu lands to the escarpments of the Bardi peoples.
South to the Palawa, and west
to the Sunset people, the Noongar.
Paying our deep respects to all our custodians, elders,
and tomorrow's knowledge holders.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks to your host. Welcome. So before we kick on with the formal program, there's just a few partners and friends that we'd like to thank. So first of all, of course, the host, Telstra, Neil and your team, you've been very supportive of us, so we're very grateful for all your support over the years and this year as well. Next, we've got our partners, Aon and Zip. So you'll be hearing from Aon and Zip later on today, and they'll be around the room. Aon, I think, has got a booth as well. So, great to have you guys here with us as well. Thank you for your support. And of course, the State of Flux organising team. So, of course, we've got Alan, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later on, and then Patrice Day. Patrice, can you give us a wave? Patrice as well, who's travelled from New Zealand, so thank you. And then, of course, our marketing team, led by Yara. Yara, can you give us a wave? So it's always nice to put a face to the person you're getting spam emails. No, I'm kidding. And then, of course, the wider ABAC team as well. So Matthew, Matthew's down the back. And then Jane, who's travelled from Auckland as well. You guys all spread around the room, makes my job. So thank you, Jane. And of course, you guys for being here. I know that it's a very busy time of the year, so we're very grateful that you're spending the morning with us, and I hope it's going to be morning well spent as well. So thank you very much for being here. This year's theme is from customer of choice to customer delights. So we're challenged to look beyond procurement. We want to look at how we impact our organisation's ultimate goal of delighting our customers. And this has become more important because of several factors. We're increasingly relying on suppliers, and you would have seen from last year's research that more than 50% of a lot of organisations' workforce are from their third parties. Brand loyalty, of course, is becoming more important, where customer delight drives loyalty, efficacy, and of course, it only works when supply chain works in harmony. It's a competitive advantage, of course, because if you're becoming the supplier's customer of choice, it secures priority access to innovation, capacity, and best resource. Customer satisfaction increasingly is being driven by experience, and it's not enough just being customer of choice. So we must translate this into delivering exceptional end customer experiences. We're also very fortunate to have a great lineup of speakers. Just before that, I'll get in trouble with marketing for that. So we do have some barcodes as well. So if you've got any questions throughout the day, please do put your phone up, scan the QR code, put it into your phone, and then we'll respond to them later on in the session as well. Please rescan it on a different. Please rescan on a different slide as well. So we do have a really great lineup of speakers as well. I do encourage you to actively ask questions, share your thoughts, and please learn from each other as well. So you'll see on the agenda, we'll kick it off this morning with Alan, who will tell us about this year's research. I think we're all very excited to hear from Alan. We'll hear from Georgia from Toll as well, who will go through her experience with Toll around suppliers and customer experience. And then we've got Paul from Aon, who will speak to us about a risk-based approach on supply chain resilience. We'll have a break, and then Jessica from Ampol will talk to us about from governance to collaboration, how to become a customer of choice, and then we'll hear from Zip as well about agents of change. And then the final formal program that we have will be a discussion panel. So you can see, again, we've got some great speakers from for the discussion panel as well, and then we'll wrap it up with Q&A from the audience, and then closing remarks, and then there'll be opportunity to network, so we'll have some nibbles out as well. Again, great line of speakers, so you can see from a wide range of industries and organisations across Australia. So we're really looking forward to their presentations and their insights. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker, who's Alan. I shouldn't really need notes to introduce Alan, but I have them here. So Alan founded State of Flux in 2004 and travelled the world providing supply management advices to global organisations. State of Flux now has presence of course, in Australia, in UK, continental Europe, US, New Zealand, and Asia. Alan has over 20 years experience in procurement and supply chain practice. So if you can please welcome Alan.
Thanks, Frank. Morning, everyone. I'm going to start with a massive thank you because we can't do this research without all of you. By the way, I've been told to stay between the plants because they're recording this, so I'm going to try and stay between the plants. And I do wander, so sorry about that. But a massive thank you because without your input on the annual research, and I know we do spam you to do the research, but without that input, we can't come up with these results and these insights. So huge thank you to everyone in the room. Feel free to give yourself a hand because I think, it's absolutely a job well done in terms of that. We're up about 20% from last year, so thank you. And of course, I know Frank's thanked the team, but, to the sponsors, especially Aon, Zip, and also our marketing team that have really worked day and night to put that together. So I'm starting with a few thank yous. I'm also going to talk a little bit about partnerships. So Aon, we've been lucky enough to work with for, nearly 20 years. And in 2007, sorry, this is slightly off-piste, but bear with me. 2007, we actually won a British Insurance Award for risk in the supply chain. And these awards were at the Royal Albert Hall. So this was kind of, and we were on, myself and a chap called Alex Heinsohn were there representing, and we're on a table, and the other people on the table won the award. So we thought, there's no way they're gonna have two winners on the table. Let's just get drunk. And of course, what happened was this big light came on, because we'd forgotten about what was going on in the awards by this stage, and then all of a sudden there was a light on the table, and luckily Alex did the stumble up to the stage to get the award. So yes, maybe that was taking partnership a little too far, but anyway. So that was a bit of fun. That's the code you need to scan for questions. Please scan them, please throw questions all the way through. I'll keep moving. This is the 17th year of doing this research, or 17th book. There's a couple of, literally a handful of old books. If anyone's interested, you can download all of the old books. But yeah, this is year number 17 of them. They will be available at the end of the session. We don't give them to you early, otherwise you'll not look at the speakers and just read the book. So, but super excited. I think it's one of the best ones yet, and I really encourage you to kind of go through it as much as you can. We've got some great case studies this year from Air Canada, US Steel, which is really interesting because they've just been taken over by Nippon. So they've got 12 billion US to spend on CapEx. So you can imagine the supply management that needs to go on around that. Auckland Transport, Vodafone Procure and Connect, which is also interesting. And for those of you may not be familiar, Currys is like JB Hi-Fi for the UK. If that's helpful. So those are the case studies. There's also an interview in there, which I really enjoy, with a lady called Karen Blackett. And Karen was the UK's most senior marketing exec. And I didn't realize they give awards for this, but she was also awarded the most influential Black person in the UK. So she's incredibly insightful, and I'd encourage you to have a read of that. I think there's also a picture of her getting her award from Prince William in the book. So please have a read of that. She's giving us the customer delight insights. Yeah. In terms of numbers, interestingly, and a huge thank you. Last year it was 25% came from the APAC region. This year we're up to 32%. So thank you. It's you've kind of knocked the Americans off second place. So thank you for that. I can't wait to deliver that message next week. Yeah. And hopefully, so over this sort of 20 odd years we've been doing this, what we've done is we've come up with what we call the 6 pillars of SRM. So these are the 6 kind of things that you must have in place to make your SRM work. They haven't changed over the period in terms of the headlines, but clearly we do evolve these as things have evolved. The reason I'm highlighting that is if you've done the research, you're eligible for a free benchmark. So please make sure you get that. So yeah, and all of that benchmark is done in that 6 pillars. Our book is organized in the 6 pillars, so everything is kind of focused on that. The key thing here is you can't work on 1 or 2 and think that the program will work. You must work on all 6. So it's pointless having great technology if you haven't got the stakeholders engaged or you haven't got processes, and vice versa. So, I should have done a massive drum roll because these are the annual results. I'm going to pick out a few things and just pick on. The first thing you'll note on the left-hand side there is that leaders only 6% of organizations are considered SRM leaders. Now, to be an SRM leader, you've got to have 4 of your 6 pillars in the top half, basically. So that's the measure. It's not us saying, right, the top X companies. It's actually they have to achieve a certain standard in their SRM program to be considered a leader. Now, what's interesting of that 6%, so I go back 4 years, it's gone 9, 8, 7, 6 over the years. So actually, there's a couple of things. One is, we've picked on the panel, they're going to have to answer a question on why do we think this has happened. But I think it's a couple of things. The economy's gotten tighter. So what tends to happen then is organizations go back to traditional thumping the table with suppliers. And then the other thing is, of course, we're all in an AI race and everyone wants Google, AWS, or maybe not AWS recently. There is an article that I've written on that one. Google, AWS, Microsoft, everyone wants to partner with them, and clearly we can't all be a strategic partner for them. So I think in terms of leadership, it's been quite interesting how that's declined over time. What's interesting is a lot more people are starting their programs though. And you'll see that in terms of the bump of the value and engagement, because the 6 pillars are pretty much in the order that you do them in, if that makes sense. Another interesting thing is that governance has declined. So we used to be good at putting structure and process. And I think part of that is that people are aware now of the sort of governance that they need. In the past, we used to get responses going, well, you know, I do a QBR, I meet with my suppliers once a month. Of course, I'm doing SRM, but of course that isn't structured, consistent processes. It doesn't kind of go across. It may be some good personal attributes, but it's not an organizational wide activity. So I think there's a realization that what we were doing previously in governance isn't as good as it should be, and the scores are lower, but it's definitely lower. I should explain that the dark blue is the leaders, light blue followers, and slate gray is followers, and light blue is fast followers. So fast followers have 3 pillars above the halfway mark to be a fast follower. And of course, I think I say this every year, but people is still lagging. And what we look for in people isn't just, have you trained your people? And there's still a gap. I've got a slide on this around people, but we also look for, has the role been defined, not just for procurement, but also your wider stakeholder? And that, I think, is where the big challenges come in. If I overlay Australia, New Zealand predominantly, or APAC, I should say, we've got a little bit of work to do, is probably the best way to do it. So that's the red line. We only have 2% of organizations in that leadership group. So I hate to tell you, if you're sitting there thinking we are a leader, you're probably not. Sorry about that, but yeah, maybe lies, damn lies and statistics. But anyway, that's what the numbers are showing us. You can see that people, we are right on the follower piece for people. So there is huge need to train our people, but equally we sit there on governance and engagement as well. Slightly up on the rest, but really we're tracking pretty close to follower on average. What I think is the big challenge is at the moment in APAC is we tend to make our programs a procurement program and not a business program. So my challenge to you is start thinking about it as a business program, not a procurement program. But happy to take questions. Please submit them, or, if you want to, feel free to call me out on anything. Couple of kind of key insights. The gap between the leaders and the rest is following around that kind of, is widening around the kind of leaders and followers, especially for that engagement area. The leaders do define what SRM is. A little litmus test that you can do: walk through your procurement department and ask everyone to pitch to you what is supplier management. And if you can get a consistent sales pitch from your team, then maybe you've nailed it. But I suspect, I always make a joke about, I'll put a cheeky bottle of red wine on the fact that you won't get a consistent view. So what tends to happen is you get real range from beat up suppliers all the way through to what time's the golf game and something in between. Most people confuse it around performance management or contract management. So just getting very clear for your organization, what is supplier management, I think is quite key. There's a really interesting piece around exec support. And look, if you want to be a leader, you need executive support, full stop. Again, I've got a page on this, but leaders have CEO support. I think it's 100% of leaders. And then we're still not seeing enough formalization. I mean, we're procurement, we like formal things, so, but getting more formal around segmentation, treatment strategies, the governance models, how the drum beats work, all of that is important. I'm getting a nod because I'm not going fast enough in my slides, so apologies there, I'll speed up. I've talked about people and the fact that we're behind on that. This year, we didn't give you credit for using Excel as a tool for managing suppliers. So if you're looking at your benchmark results or even the results overall, they have gone down in technology because we don't give you credit for using Excel. It is the hacker's tool of choice, so it's probably not the tool we should be using. But there's also, there is a lot more supply management tools in the market. And so we are seeing that. The biggest challenge on technology is people are trying to use the wrong tool to manage suppliers. So trying to use their ERP and effectively, excuse the language, bastardize that for something that it really isn't designed to do. So, and joint account planning is declining. And in fact, I would actually say it's plummeted in this. So joint account planning, where you're, sitting with your strategic suppliers and coming up with shared goals, shared objectives, what their salesperson's bonused on, all of that. Last year it was sitting around 40%. This year it's in around about that 22% mark. So it's absolutely plummeted. And I think it's critical because as the kind of landscape is changing, a lot of these key suppliers aren't just suppliers anymore. They're customers, they're partners, they're competitors. So your tool really has to be joint account planning. APAC, right, a couple of things. We are getting strong engagement from procurement in APAC, but we've got some work to do around getting our execs on board. So getting our sales shoes on and selling it to the organization is kind of key. Compliance and risk tend to be the main sales pitches for what people are using in APAC. We must comply or there is a risk here. The challenge with that is it's sort of like telling someone not to do something. So it's not a positive reason. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to link the end customer to this, so that you could show your executives that actually it makes a big difference with your end customer, not just compliance and risk. And I've talked about the maturity. So I think there is a good opportunity to learn from what the Europe and US are different. I know this region is considerably different. But in actual fact, the fact that we've got, generally we have less suppliers that we can work with. You know, in America, you can just get rid and there'll be 16 others that will want to supply. Here, we might have an option of 2 or 3. So really we have to, I think the key thing here is actually being more collaborative, because even if you don't like the supplier, you haven't got much choice. So, and you can make damn sure that if you get rid of them, the other one knows all the reasons why. So, yeah. So I think there's a big opportunity, and we have better access to our executives. So we should be able to leapfrog US and Europe on that front. So I'm going to give you some insights, firstly on the kind of theme and then on the 6 pillars. I will race through those, and I'm happy to answer questions. The standout figure for here is that less than 10% of organizations are actually sharing customer feedback with their suppliers. Now, couple that with the thought that over 50% of your customer experience is delivered by suppliers, yet less than 10% of the time we're giving them feedback on what suppliers say. So we're asking them to deliver without giving them the kind of insights and headlines of what they need to deliver. Leaders do use suppliers to help kind of plan for customer solutions, sort of 80-odd%. But yeah, it's the followers, it plummets from that. And then the 70% there, I actually think this is not high enough, is the organizations feel supplier communication is key to delighting customers. I would almost say it should be close to the 100%. So funnily enough, I think that's almost one of the quite shocking results, is why isn't it 100%? Couple of things, you know, what we're trying to do is not just satisfy, but how do you actually delight customers? And there's lots of research in there. We've kind of looked at the research around delighting customers. But one of the things you can also do is use that concept of delighting customers with delighting suppliers as well. So I would also get you to think about what is the supplier experience in your organization. Every organization thinks about what is the customer experience. The challenge here is what is the supplier experience, because we know there's that correlation between customer and supplier. Yeah, and I think what there is some insight in there. We've seen from the luxury brands that they're very good around creating supplier loyalty. But most organizations are not very good. You don't hear the term supplier loyalty from big brands. You do hear it about customer loyalty, but we don't hear it about supplier loyalty. So what are we doing to create loyal advocates in our organization, not just with customers, but also with suppliers? Hopefully you can read this, but it's sort of customer of choice is about trust and reliability, collaboration. So what we did see a direct correlation between what was happening at the supplier side through to delivering to the customer side. And strong collaborative partnerships are not only helping delight customers, but they're helping you deliver earlier. So you're 5 times as likely faster speed to market, 3 times as likely new innovation from your suppliers if you've got them there. So just a couple of things to think about. Some key stats here, and I won't go through all of these, just conscious of time. But most organizations, so 82% agree that there's strong and moderate connection between customer satisfaction and supplier performance. So if your suppliers don't perform, there's a knock-on effect, which is why we called the book The Butterfly Effect, basically, because you do something with your suppliers, you know there is a knock-on effect. But the one that stuck out for me was only 14% of organizations use their suppliers to help create customer propositions, which I think is shocking. You have suppliers with big research and development teams or new product teams or new service teams, and yet we're not leveraging them to help delight or create new products and services for our customers. So that was the one that stuck out for me. I should say we will get all these slides to you. And again, if we look at this, these are the followers here in the yellow. We do not have a formal process for managing supplier impact on the customer. So most people are not measuring the supplier impact on their customers. I talked about this last year, so apologies for those of you who were in the room last year, but one of the techniques we recommend is actually mapping some customer journeys and then overlaying the supplier impact on that journey so that you can see what's happening. And I'd hugely encourage you to do that because it does give you a very good impact analysis on that, and that will help create that kind of business case for change as well. So for each of the pillars, so this is the value one. I talked about, have you defined kind of what your business case is? Sort of 94% of organizations that are leaders have defined what SRM is and what they're doing about it. Leaders are getting over 4% benefit. We normally find the range sits between 2 and 6%, but virtually sort of more than half of the leaders are getting over 4%. So there's definitely value in getting to that leadership group. And then finally, leaders do define targets and so on. I talked about engagement. I mentioned 100% of leaders have executive support. So if you're looking for a direct correlation, get your sales shoes on, go and knock onto your executive team on their doors. And what I find it funny, we'll go and talk to people and we'll say, do you measure whether you're a customer of choice? And often people will say, yes, we do. We talk to them. It's like, come on, guys, let's get formal, structured measures around how we're doing it. Because, fireside chat where the supplier's probably also trying to win your business at the same time is probably not the most insightful. So I'd really encourage you to look at that formal, structured feedback where the supplier not only gives you what they think of you, but what they think of you versus your competitors is the insight. So only 50% are doing that or are relying on ad hoc conversations. And I don't think as an industry that's where we want to be. One here, only 33% of organizations have formal documented SRM governance. So have a think about that. Treatment strategies, when we look at that, most people define their segmentation and then come up with treatment strategies, but it tends to only be for the large suppliers. And remember, and especially, here we're looking at First Nation organizations, those treatment strategies needs to cover all your range of suppliers. And also, even for the large suppliers, you'll have some that are strategic for, I don't know, legal or marketing, but not strategic for the business. That's two different treatment strategies. So yeah, there's definitely an opportunity for us to have a look at that. And this year, last few years, risk was coming up as the #1 segmentation. Guess what? Spend has come back up in terms of that. So we're sort of regressing a bit, and the best programs I see have about 10 to 15 different criteria that they will use for segmentation. Only a third of people are implementing SRM training, and I know a few in the room are doing some training with us, thank you. But certainly there is definitely an opportunity. And again, it's more often that the leaders are doing training. I think there's 5 key audiences you want to think about training. There's your core SRM team or center of excellence, whatever you want to call it. There's the wider procurement team. There's your business operational stakeholders. There's executives. And in some cases, you'll need to train your suppliers as well. So think about those 5 audiences and how you're approaching those. And at the moment, only, most people, it's 50% of organizations are managing suppliers on a part-time basis. I actually think that's low. I think most people are managing suppliers on a part-time basis. And the model we think works best is when you have that center of excellence and a lot of the supply management is actually done by the business, which means your training, your processes, your policies need to be business orientated, not procurement orientated. Technology, I mentioned slightly there, but see, only 10% of leaders actually are really using tools to help with value and innovation. Most people are seeing that technology as a kind of one place to manage that supplier, so 3/4 of people. And 87% of people are still using Excel tools or not much Outlook to manage suppliers. So huge opportunity to underpin what you're doing around technology. I know we have Supplier Base which covers contract performance, risk, relationship, innovation. Zip will talk to you about what they're doing around AI and the automation of intake, but that we certainly partner with them because that is not it doesn't cover supply management. But there's some interesting things out there. But there are definitely tools out there to help manage suppliers. And I think I'm getting quite close to my time. I'm getting a few nods there. And finally, on collaboration, I talked about the fact that joint account planning is critical, but only 3% of organizations are really doing it for more than 75% of their suppliers. And I should say 75% of their strategic suppliers. We get, this is an interesting one, 58% of people consider themselves a customer of choice, but back to my point, we're not formally measuring it. So we think we're important to the supplier, maybe because they say nice things to us, but we need to actually have that formal measure to do it. So I'm going to give you sort of 6 key things to think about. Some is, linking your business case or your business plan for SRM to the key outcomes. So linking that to the customer using that technique I talked about. Looking at how you're going to embed supplier management into the wider business program. So I'll come back to it. It's a business change program led by procurement, not a procurement change program. So getting that feedback structured far more formal than it currently is. You wouldn't measure your customer feedback in an unstructured way. Think of your organizations and how much time and effort goes into measuring customer feedback, how formal that is, and so on. Have a think about how you're doing that. So we think there's 2 levels. There's that customer of choice piece, which is more strategic, having a look at our kind of wider group. And then for your very strategic suppliers, running 360-degree feedback, where they're giving you feedback on the relationship and you're giving them feedback on the relationship. I've gone on a bit about governance structures, but there is a definite need for that. And looking at how kind of the ecosystem works around that supplier. Looking at technology, I see we've got 6 twice, but anyway, 7. And in fact, it's the same point, so it's only 6. Anyway, so Jerry's nodding his head. After writing the book and doing all the slides and creating videos, we'll give him 1, I think, in terms of that one. And I should have picked it up as well, so apologies. Please throw some questions up. I'm going to come back after the panel for questions. Some of the questions I sneakily weaved into the panel as well, so hopefully you'll get their insights into some of the things that we've covered around some of those. But please read the book. We're here. There's quite a lot of other team here, so ask us all questions about it, and good luck with your programs. Really.
So as Alan mentioned, there will be time for questions afterwards as well. It's good to see that there's a few questions that you guys put online already, so please do keep them coming, and we will try to respond as many as we can towards the end. With that, we do have our next speaker coming up as well. So we have Georgia Wallis. Georgia is currently the EVP of Global Business Services and Group Procurement at Toll. She's led global procurement and shared services transformation and she's got over 20 years experience across different industries. She's held senior roles at ANZ, Dell, and of course now Toll. So if you can please welcome me in welcoming Georgia.
Okay, so good, everyone can hear me. Thank you. Thank you, State of Flux, for inviting me here today. I'd like to just share a little bit about Toll, but really my presentation is very much on how our suppliers impact our customers on a day-to-day basis. But let me share a little bit about Toll. So many of you will know that Toll is a, very Australian icon. We've been around over 150 years, but we're also a multinational. We're owned by Japan Post. We are a freight forwarder and a contract logistics provider. You probably would recall there was a parcel business. We used to deliver your, B2C parcels. We don't do that anymore. We divested that business a few years ago, and you will see those trucks, which are now relabeled Team Global Express. So just for this conversation, we're very much freight forwarding and contract logistics, which is the warehousing and distributing for B2B. So what I wanted to talk to everybody about today is in Toll, we have a very large subcontractor workforce. So we have drivers, we have warehouse operators, and we really see them, although they are contracted separately as subcontractors, we see them as part of our extended workforce. And what's one of the most important things for Toll is all about safety. So we have a safety first culture. And when we are working with our subcontractors, we're also asking them to maintain the same high safety standards that we do. So we work with them on onboarding, we put them through health checks, we do safety checks, we teach them the Toll way all around safety. And that's to manage our risk and our reputation with our end customers, because whoever is turning up to unload at the wharf or to deliver into a store, they are seen as an extension of Toll. So if we're not able to teach them the Toll values, get them to operate as if they are Toll, then our reputation is impacted. So managing that risk, you can see it echo through the supply chain quite quickly if we don't do that. And aside from the risk part of it, we also have to manage through relationship. And with the relationship, I'm talking about working with our vendors very closely up front and building that strong rapport and relationship. And there's a few sort of examples of that where so as an example, Volvo, one of our large OEMs providing our trucks, There was a battery recall in 2024. We were able to get ahead of that before the rest of the market because of our relationship with Volvo. And that prevented downstream impacts in the distribution chain. But working through those relationships, it's all about collaboration, shared values, shared interests, shared outcomes. So we work hard beyond the contract to maintain that through the quarterly business reviews, through all of the other opportunities at a senior level, from engaging it as our CEO right through down into the organisation. And by building those relationships and establishing the rapport and trust, we're able to get a lot more through our vendors than we do if we treat them purely as a supplier. So probably one of the next things that's really important to us is the shared outcomes. And I was really interested in Alan's conversation around supplier performance management and supplier risk management. So I would say that, a few years ago, we were very foundational in this space. We put together a supplier performance management framework. We segmented our vendors, and exactly as Alan described, it didn't go anywhere beyond procurement. It was just seen as a procurement tool, and we were in fact asked to do all of the heavy lifting by our business around that. Sort of fast forward, and if you recall that Toll had 2 cyber incidents in 2020, and we were one of the first Australian organisations to be really badly impacted. So we had a very big focus on cyber security, and as a result of that, third-party risk became one of our the 13th enterprise risk vector. So we built up through Process Unity, which is part of Cyber GRX, our third-party risk management framework. And that's where we've been much more successful in engaging the entire business, training the business, and working through what are the different elements that we want to put into the framework to then measure our vendors against. And with Process Unity and that tool, we've targeted 450 vendors. We're up to 150 so far that we've put through the process. But what we do is we work very closely with executive owners in the business. So each of our strategic or critical vendors have a executive sponsor, and it filters down through the operational levels around how often we survey them, what do we do with the results, how their results feed into our ESG reporting. So it's completely changed the conversation that we've been having over the prior years, where the business felt that because they had strong relationships and they'd used the same vendors for 20 years, they knew what they were doing. By elevating it into an enterprise risk, reporting on it as part of the audit and risk committee, and then having an interactive, engaging tool that's sort of linked to the cybersecurity as well, we've really been able to change that conversation and move the needle. So are we, breakthrough? No. I'd say we've moved from foundational to stable capable. We've still got a lot of work to do. But it has definitely changed the way that we engage with the vendors as a procurement function. It changes the way we engage with the business. So what we also do is each of my GMs of indirect or direct, etc., they are part of the extended leadership teams of different businesses, and they make sure that they're talking about the suppliers, they're talking about the results, they're giving early warnings ahead of what's going on from what the suppliers are telling us. And those quality conversations are only happening because we have put in that formalised process. But still a lot of work to do, but it's an exciting journey, and I'm really pleased to be able to share some of that with you. Thanks. Frank.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Georgia. Yep, thanks for a very insightful presentation, Georgia. It's always nice to hear what some of the leading organisations in Australia is doing around this space. Just one more slide. Excellent. So with that, we do have a final speaker before we head to our break today. So we've got Paul from Aon. Paul leads Aon's global risk consulting team in Australia and oversees engineering, valuations, and risk management, consulting, and risk analytics. Paul has decades of experience in risk management, and he brings deep expertise across a wide range of sectors. So if you can please welcome me in welcoming Paul to the stage.
How's that? Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much, Frank. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to talk about something that's very, very dear to my heart, being risk. I am going to start with an apology. I am a risk nerd, self-confessed. And when I found the insurance industry as a risk nerd, it was absolutely nirvana. So today there's going to be a whole bunch of doom and gloom, and I really, really am sorry about that. But I know that we're all really interested about how things can actually go wrong. So over the last 15 years of my career, I've been supporting clients of all sorts of types, look at risks in all sorts of different ways. And there's probably been one fact that's held true that entire time. And everyone is really trying to build resilience. But there's a couple of problems with that. Firstly, not many organisations actually understand what resilience means for them. They can't actually answer that question. The other reason is that they actually don't know why they're building the resilience. Why is the procurement team or supply chain team building resilience? What about the operational teams? There's no real coherent understanding of what resilience actually means. So talking to this audience here, it's great because I think a key part of resilience is how do we absolutely delight our customers and that customer experience. So I think supply chain and risk management coming together is a really good way to sort of think about a risk approach to supply chain. So what am I actually going to talk about today? I want to talk about sort of three things. And the first one is the why, the customer experience. You know, how do we think about that? The second thing is the what, that's supply chain resilience. And the third piece is really about the how, like how do we actually try and understand the risks within our supply chain and the disruptions that they're going to cause to that customer experience. And like all good risk people, I'm going to start from risk. What I've got up here on screen is Aon's Global Risk Management Survey. The survey is run every 2 years and it was just released. So the latest iteration was only released about 3 weeks ago. It's been running for about 16 years and it surveys about 2,500 C-suite level executives right across the globe. There's about 120, I think, here in Australia this year. And it surveys them about what do you see as the largest risk to your organisation? No prizes for number one, cyber risk. I'm sure you can all agree that that's definitely number one risk for most organisations these days. But probably the biggest insight for me when I look at this data is that obviously supply chain risk is a top 10 risk, but there's a number of other risks in there that really closely link or at least drive some of that supply chain risk. So if we think about geopolitical volatility, anyone with a supply chain running through Europe, Suez Canal at the moment, you're probably feeling that. What if we think about commodity price or scarcity of materials? Yes, we've broken the back of inflation, but there's a bit of data coming out very recently that's saying, hey, maybe we haven't, and maybe that's starting to rear its head again. So I suppose watch this space there. And what about regulatory and legislative risk? All I'll say is Donald Trump. So all these risks are really starting to compound together. But probably the biggest interesting piece for me is number 8 on that list there. So damage to reputation and brand. And I think we'd all agree that that's what we're trying to do. When we're talking about customer experience, it's really how are we managing that customer experience and making sure that we don't damage our brand so customers are actually interacting with us in the way that we want. So when I think about supplier risk management and linking that experience, that customer experience, that's how I see it through the risk lens. The other piece that's really interesting about this is that you're probably also starting to notice that risks aren't materialising one at a time. We're actually seeing, because of this interconnected nature and because of the interconnected nature of a lot of our supply chains, we're seeing risks really materialising all at once. So it's no longer do we have to worry about a port strike or a logistics issue or a CAT event somewhere in the world. Because of that interconnected nature of risk and supply chains, we're actually seeing all these things materialise at once. So I really don't envy you guys having to deal with that with the supply chains that you've got. But it's really important to understand that. And that's what I really want to talk about now is the how. How do we start to think about this as a enterprise type risk? So what I've got up there on the screen is an approach that we use when we're thinking about supply chain risk management. And I won't go through each one of those steps, but probably the two critical ones for me are the supply chain impact and the enterprise view of risk. And I'll talk a little bit around what we mean by this. So supply chain impact, and Alan sort of spoke about it and Georgia kind of spoke about it as well. We really need to understand what is driving the why. Why are we actually doing this stuff? What are we measuring? Why are we measuring it? What does it actually mean for us? Is it that you're worried about engagement through a website? Is it that you're worried about someone interacting into one of your fronting stores? What is it that you're actually trying to drive? And when you can actually answer that question, everything just becomes so much clearer because you can absolutely focus. Who here has an infinite budget for managing risk? No? No takers? Okay. That focus is absolutely important. If you're not understanding which risks on which supplier, you're just going to play one of two cards, a scattergun, or you're just going to go for the biggest. And I'm going to try and manage that one. The second one is enterprise risk view. And what do I mean by that? What we do see with a lot of organisations is when they take that scattergun or that approach that feels like, oh, it's the usual thing that I should be doing with a technology provider, they're thinking about the usual risks. They're not usually the risks that are going to come around and bite you. They're the ones you're prepared for. So what you really need to start to think about is this enterprise view. What are the other risks that I should be thinking about? What are the things coming around the corner? What's the trends that I need to be wary about through my supply chain? A really good example of this at the moment was about 2 months ago, Jaguar Land Rover cyber event, cost the company £50 million per week for 4 weeks. They had to go and ask their parent for a £2 billion loan and the UK government for 1.5 billion just to cover their exposure. What happened, what was really interesting about that cyber attack was it impacted them, JLR, but it also impacted their entire supply chain. The tier one suppliers couldn't supply to them because they had this just-in-time type model, so there was no surge in that system. So here's a risk that's impacting you, that's now impacting your suppliers. Probably the really interesting part of that was then tier two suppliers were going, hey, all of a sudden I've just lost my demand overnight. I'm running on some pretty razor-thin margins and I think I'm going to go under. So without an understanding of how these risks might materialise, trying to manage those things starts to become really, really difficult. So one of the pieces of work that we do with organisations is what we call our risk indicator. And up there, I've got a bit of an example of one of those risk indicators for an organisation. What this risk indicator is an AI-based large language model that we've put together that looks at not only kind of what's out there in the wide world. I said I was a risk nerd at the beginning. Insurance is great because there is mountains of data in insurance. We get to see all the things that when they get past your compliance, and I'll say this, risk management is not compliance, or compliance is not risk management. A lot of things fall past that, and that's where insurance is there to actually see what happens once it gets through that barrier. So we use all of that data, we use all of the data across the various other data sources to pull together risk profiles for an organisation. And this could be your organisation, it could be suppliers, once we've done a supplier map, to help understand what are those risks I need to be thinking about. And this is also where that enterprise view comes in. We need to think about risks outside of the normal. The other piece of really interesting information that comes out of these is actually trending. So we can actually have a look at, well, what is the risk profile looking like for each of these risks over time? So you might sort of look at that one and go, well, cyber risk, maybe not something that I need to go and put a huge amount of focus on. But what about regulatory or legislative change? These guys might be in the US at the moment. So it's really useful to help you pivot and move and spend the time where the time needs to be spent on these risks. If we just hold that thought around cyber a little bit more, what we can then actually talk about is, well, how does that particular risk, if that's the one that we're interested in, track over time? And what the data is actually showing us for this particular organisation, that risk is actually starting to reduce in impact and likelihood. So maybe I'm not going to spend my time there. But the other really interesting thing, and I think for this particular audience, is when people think of cyber risk in a supply chain context, they're typically thinking about disruption, stopping, the JLR example that I was sort of thinking about, that I was talking about. What this particular piece of information is telling this organisation is that it's actually the loss of sensitive data that they should be worried about. It's actually not a supply chain risk as such in this kind of context. So maybe we need to start thinking about how we build resilience into the data piece. Maybe we need to start thinking about what resilience means in the context of a data breach and start pivoting our resources to that. I'm sure most people have lost some form of data over the last 2 years. Think about how you interact with those brands these days now, even though they have lost your data, right? I'll just leave it with you. Has it changed? Probably not, because all of a sudden they're starting to pivot the way that they manage those risks because they now know what they're doing. But imagine you could do that way before that event actually happened. How much difference would that make to your customer's experience? That's what these kind of tools and insights can really provide organisations. So just a quick example in terms of application of this kind of approach. So this structured approach around understanding risks, understanding their impact. We did a piece of work for an automotive organisation in the in the US, that looked at about 18,000 suppliers across their entire network. And what this particular risk indicator found was that there was one supplier in there. They provided a pigment for a particular paint that was very popular, obviously. That only had one supplier. The other thing that it found was that there were multiple risks that this supplier was actually exposed to, as well as multiple risks that the organisation, the automotive organisation, could actually almost impose onto that, almost like our JLR example. So what that particular organisation was actually able to do then was to pivot and start to implement some controls around that supplier, and we're actually able to start diversifying that network and look for alternative suppliers. Without that piece of analysis, trying to find that literally needle in a haystack that was going to create the biggest impact would have been very difficult for that organisation. The really key part about this is understanding that impact. And that's the issue that we see a lot with organisations that we work for, is that they don't quite understand how to quantify or understand that impact. I think Alan said, hey, you know, we ring up our supplier and that's our measure. Like, when you think about impact, what you really need to start thinking about is, what is the driving number? What's the thing that I can boil it down to that really drives my loss, my disruption, my impact to my customer? So in this particular case, it was about outage times. It was how long could I actually go without pigment X before I could see an impact to my operations. Other organisations might go really high level and think about, well, what's the impact on my earnings per share? Some might look at traffic to websites. Some might look at all sorts of different other metrics. But the real key thing is actually spending time and thinking about what that metric is that you're actually trying to quantify. And when you've done all the work in untangling your supply chain, untangling all the risks that are in there, that actually becomes really easy to do, because you're now not trying to find a metric that's across 10, 20, 30 different risks. You've actually focused it down to one, maybe two, that you need to start to quantify. And that's the real trick in a lot of this piece of work. So measuring the impact is absolutely critical to any risk-based approach. No longer is it really good enough to think about risk in a qualitative sense. So when I first sort of started risk management almost 20 years ago, high, medium and low, moderate, extreme, all those words, which I'm sure I'm getting some nodding heads, which I'm sure you're all still probably using these days to look at risk. That's probably not good enough now because of all the issues that I've been talking about, this complexity, the size of the impact, what you're impacting, how it's impacting. We really need to understand how can we boil down that impact piece so we can actually drive some change and some mitigation. So what are we actually seeing around that space? So from a resiliency perspective, once we understand the impact, we can actually start to put some of these controls in place. So whilst we are seeing clients look at nearshoring and reshoring of operations, what they're finding through the quantification process is actually it might be just easier to go and put some buffer stock in place. So I'm an engineer by background, and a long time ago when I was in engineering world in production, a month's buffer stock was like the minimum. These days, if you've got a week, you'd be absolutely lucky. So this kind of change in trend is definitely something that we're starting to see. The other piece that we're starting to see is around using financial tools to manage some of these exposures. So some of the financial tools you'd be absolutely familiar with, currency hedging, commodity hedging, things like that around sort of suppliers. But we're also seeing insurance capital coming into the market to actually help with these mitigations. So one that we've worked on recently with a food and bev organisation. So through an understanding of their supply chain and understanding of the risks that they had and understanding then how do we actually try and mitigate that, we're actually be able to put in what we call a parametric that ties weather event, that was the risk, to an impact, supply of a particular raw ingredient. And because we're actually able to quantify that, we could actually take it to an insurer who said, hey, I absolutely want to put a bet on that, and actually provide an insurance coverage on it. Without that quantification step, there is no way that you'd ever able to even think about a mitigation strategy like that. Now, that's not easy. And some of the other data that we've actually pulled from our global risk management survey is around how organisations think about quantification or see quantification. Whilst I'm sure all of you in here would love to be able to quantify everything, I know you're all just as risk nerdy as I am, but only 14% of organisations are actually doing it. And only 19% of those are actually thinking about it in a place that's actually easy to quantify, which is in an insurance type program. So quantification, whilst incredibly useful, incredibly important, is a little bit hard to do. So that's probably the piece that I would sort of encourage all of you is to start thinking about what those metrics are and how can I actually start to put numbers around them. The last piece is around enterprise. And and if you are interested in parametrics, we will be out there and I can talk your ear off until the cows come home. The last piece, as I said before, is really having this kind of enterprise view of risk. Don't silo yourselves on the risks that are kind of front and center. Really think widely, use as many tools as you can to understand what those risks actually are and how they're impacting that supply chain, rather than just sort of thinking about the obvious. Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to find that 1 in 18,000 supplier that's really going to create the huge impact on your operations. So I hope I've come through on my promise around talking to how can we use a risk-based quantification approach to try and understand supplier risk and then implement a couple of strategies that you might want to put in place to manage some of those risks. So thank you very much for having me here today. And yeah, if there's any questions, we'll be out in the booth there later.
Yeah, so we probably do have time for a couple of questions. Does anyone have questions for Paul? Like Paul said, he will be out in the booth as well. Anyone has anything? So we do have questions on mine as
sure.
well, so we can save that later. So look, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for your time. I think it does take a bit of self-confidence to admit to a room full of people that you are a risk nerd. I actually wrote an 8,000-word essay on risk when I was at uni. So you've shown me the way that
There we go,
it's okay to classify
closet risk nerd.
So thank you, Paul. So look, in line with our theme of delighting customers, we do have time for break and a bit of coffee and a little bit of nibbles as well. So we have half an hour and the food and drinks outside. If anyone needs the restroom, it's going straight and it's right to the left over there as well. So we'll be back in 30 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent. So thanks for being back on time. I hope that you're delighted with the food and drinks and, you know, all freshened up to go now, second half of the session. So with the next part, we've got Jessica Lloyd from Ampol. Jess has over 15 years experience in procurement across diverse industries, leading the procurement, governance, risk and support function at Ampol. At Ampol, she's led the uplift of SRM framework, enabling greater value creation through governance and collaboration. If you can please join me in welcoming Jess to the stage, please.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Lloyd. So I look after the governance, risk and support function with Ampol. I've been with Ampol for 3.5 years. And as Frank said, my background's in operations, transformation, governance and driving best practice throughout procurement. So today I'm going to go through Ampol's recent SRM journey since I've been with the group. And I've kind of tried to tie it into this year's theme of becoming a customer of choice. So quickly, I'm just going to go through our journey, why it matters to Ampol, our governance framework, balancing SRM and performance management, some of the lessons that we've learnt and the benefits that we've seen, and then becoming a customer of choice for customer delight. So I think what you see across a lot of industries is procurement is evolving beyond cost compliance. We're not just negotiating contracts, executing contracts and moving on. We're now driving resilience, innovation, sustainable value for organisations. SRM is at the heart of how we engage and manage suppliers across the organisation. So why does SRM matter? So at Ampol, we have around 20 category managers and specialists. We look after around $2 billion in spend annually with around 3,000 suppliers. These suppliers account for a significant portion of our organisational spend and risk. Our SRM framework ensures that all of our suppliers are treated as an extension of our business, aligned to our corporate and operational objectives. How we manage suppliers isn't just about them performing well and meeting their contractual obligations and KPIs. It has a direct impact on how the customers experience our products and services. It's because of this that it's important that our framework caters to all suppliers, not just those that we spend a lot of money with. We segment suppliers based on certain criteria. However, consistency is key. We need to ensure that our approach and execution is consistent for all of our suppliers, regardless of how we segment them. So this is just a little overview of the journey, at least since I've been with Ampol. So when I first joined, we did manage suppliers, but the procurement team was very much a sourcing and contracting function. A lot of projects, a lot of reactive sourcing. We had shorter standard contract terms, and procurement for the most part supported the business up to contract sign-off and handover, and then we moved on to the next project. So from 2023 to 2024, we started to shift. So we embedded a strong governance framework to measure and monitor contract coverage and compliance. We moved to longer standard contract terms from 3 to 5 years. We established more supplier panels so that the business could run a lot of their own events without having to go to market all the time. We also started to focus on relationships internally with our stakeholders. So not just supporting them on project delivery, but supporting them with strategy development, business planning and budgeting. We also assessed our segmentation approach and made decisions to focus on suppliers where procurement specifically could add the most value and drive the benefits for both parties. Smaller suppliers, we've coached on our approach and our expectations, and we've invested time to develop them so that they could execute and deliver. In 2024 to this year, we've refined our SRM approach even further to focus on what we call the minimum viable product for an effective framework. Again, we only have 20 category managers and specialists, so we don't have the capacity to manage 100 suppliers as strategic because we spend X million dollars with them. We need to be able to put procurement's efforts where we can have the most value for both parties. So we applied consistency, structured reviews, standard agendas, consistent messaging, regardless of the service. We started asking suppliers for feedback on us, which we'd never done before. How are we doing as a customer? What do we like to work with? And what was interesting was the feedback was very consistent, whether it was a supplier in our refinery or our retail network. Ampol are very operational. We don't share our strategic objectives. We're very reactive. We respond to issues and risks rather than anticipating them. So we took this feedback on board. We developed, documented, and started tracking annual plans that we developed in collaboration with the suppliers and with the business to focus on that value above and beyond the contract, not just performance management. We've also started to track benefits, not just savings, to promote our success through case studies and comms. And we've invested in developing our procurement team, but also our business stakeholders, contract owners and sponsors, so that they're on the same page as us, telling the same story to the suppliers, to our execs. Looking forward for next year and beyond, we're continuing to uplift our capability. We're continuing to seek feedback, doing innovation days with strategic and important suppliers to get out of that day-to-day operational and talk about continuous improvement. We're also putting ESG at the forefront. So rather than it just being a standard agenda item that maybe gets 2 minutes, we're creating ESG specific action items as part of our annual plans. So our framework now is fairly simple. It used to be, I think, a 50+ page document, which was very procurement-y. It had a lot of procurement jargon, and it was really hard to interpret if you had never heard of SRM or if you weren't in procurement. Now it's, I think, 17 pages now, which I'm very proud of. I did that this year. It's simple and effective, and when it's executed well, it delivers the results for us and for our customers. So our framework does a few things. It ensures that every supplier is managed, but not every supplier is managed the same. We apply SRM consistently across the organisation so that suppliers are managed by design, not by exception. Through the segmentation, we tailor our engagement treatment to drive outcomes. Contract and performance management remain with the business. They're the experts on that. Procurement are the strategic enabler, unlocking the deeper partnerships. We play a critical role in enabling collaboration and turning supplier capability into competitive advantage. We have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, which means that we can clearly communicate this to the business, to the suppliers, set accountability and support decision making. So these are some golden rules that it might be a bit hard to read, that we've kind of developed over the last 2 years since we've been really focusing on this. The first one is one that I'm really passionate about, is SRM for us is not a verb. We don't do SRM or we don't SRM suppliers. SRM is our framework. It's like procure to pay or source to contract. We don't P2P suppliers. We don't S2C suppliers. SRM is our framework. It's part of how we operate. It's not an activity. Every supplier is managed under the framework. So procurement may focus and put a lot more effort with our strategic, but we still apply the framework to every tier of that segmentation pyramid. The segmentation drives the governance, and the governance tells us how much oversight a supplier requires, while the business tiers tell us how much day-to-day performance management is required. Procurement segmentation and business performance management don't need to match perfectly. Probably they won't a lot of the time. They should inform each other. And SRM and performance management should be complementary, not competing. So I think to Alan's point before, there are services and products that are critical to certain parts of the business or strategic, but at the group level, maybe not. And that's not where, you know, we'll focus our efforts in that kind of joint value beyond the contract. So this is just some content around supplier relationship management versus supplier performance management that we use internally to kind of show that difference to the business when we're trying to get that buy-in. The misconception that SRM is just managing performance driven by procurement rather than the business. SRM is about building strategic partnerships, while performance management is tracking how well a supplier delivers against the contract. For us, procurement can add the most value when we focus on those collaborative partnerships, long-term value creation, facilitate a forum for two-way engagement with our suppliers, and enable alignment and continuous improvement. Our business contract owners and sponsors are the experts in that day-to-day. They're able to ensure the suppliers meeting contractual obligations, monitoring compliance, focusing on metrics. Procurement are involved, we have a seat at the table, but it's very much up to the business to drive this. So what have we learned? We're still learning, I think. We're still trying to get this consistently across our suppliers, particularly our strategic. The first one is the clear and consistent messaging. SRM means different things to different people, especially when you're talking to someone outside of procurement. Without the consistent messaging, you can quickly lose traction and buy-in. Focusing on the why before the how and the what, getting buy-in matters. So if you can't be successful, if the business is just seeing this as more meetings that procurement want to run with the suppliers. Building capability with procurement and the stakeholders. So for us, we don't have a dedicated SRM team or vendor managers. So our category managers need to be skilled in relationship management, not just sourcing and negotiations. We need to invest in upskilling. So we delivered some training to the team, as well as our stakeholders, because our CMs need capability in facilitation, influencing, and that value generation. You need strong relationships with your internal stakeholders. It has to be a partnership with the business and procurement. Early engagement, co-ownership of outcomes creates buy-in. Embed SRM with existing activities, not an extra layer to make adoption easier. The last thing people want is more meetings. So how can we look at what's already happening today and uplift that rather than coming in and saying, we want to SRM this supplier, here's another 5 meetings to do. And then strong governance drives consistency. We need to build trust in the process by doing it consistently and well. So these are just some things that we've seen just in the past year, 18 months, by having a strong SRM framework. So we do annual planning with our strategic suppliers, and then that's kind of followed up with quarterly reviews to track progress against those plans. We're seeing better relationships with these suppliers because we're asking them for feedback on us, we're giving feedback on them, and then we're incorporating that into the discussions. We're increasing the trust and transparency by incorporating both ours and their strategic objectives. We've got improved KPI development with our maintenance suppliers, over 100 ideas across service quality and delivery delivered through the annual planning process. Scope review workshops with our maintenance suppliers. We've increased ESG awareness. We've started doing innovation days with strategic and important suppliers to again get out of that day to day and talk about, you know, what's happening in the market, what's happening in industry, and deliver better for the customer experience. And of course, we're getting some commercial hard savings through things like rebates and other cost benefits. So just to tie it in with this year's theme, becoming a customer of choice for customer delight. So our framework isn't just about supplier performance. It's about protecting Ampol, our brand, driving the value and enhancing the experience for our end customer. Because of the SRM framework, our customers can benefit directly from reliable supply, consistent quality, and confidence in what we provide to them. The suppliers that we manage as strategic include our on-site maintenance providers at our refinery, our retail network maintenance, our terminal tank maintenance, chemicals, catalysts and gases, IT services, even down to the products you might buy when you visit an Ampol site. All of these suppliers have a direct relation to our end customer and our customer experience. So by embedding value generation, innovation and sustainability through SRM, we directly enhance what the customers experience, see and feel from us. Becoming a customer of choice allows us to deliver improved innovative products and services for customer delight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you. There's really great insights around Ampol's journey. I think we've all learnt something from that presentation. So thank you, Jess. With our next speaker, we've got Joe from Zip speaking for us. So Joe's an expert in procurement and finance technology. He's got over 20 years experience. He's helped organisations navigate digital transformation and optimise their procurement operations. At Zip, Joe is leading initiatives that transform procurement processes through integration of AI and advanced technologies and automation. So you can please join me in welcoming Joe.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks to Alan and the State of Flux team. This is a global partnership that we have. We'll also be doing the same thing over in Chicago and London pretty soon. So great to be part of this, and thanks to the Telstra team for hosting us today. Just a little bit of background, firstly, on myself. A bit like Paul, if I go back long enough, I was an engineer in the automotive industry, but that's long forgotten now. I've been a procurement practitioner for over 15 years across a variety of different industries, but I've spent the balance of my last kind of 10 years working across consulting and helping guide organisations around their procurement, supply chain and finance transformations, and really looking to use technology as an enabler for that change. Really passionate about two things: making everyone's job easier and doing things better and continuous improvement. And I've always been really passionate about SRM because I just think there is so much value to be unlocked from partnerships with suppliers. That just is a huge amount of untapped value that's sitting there beyond beating suppliers over the head through constant sourcing projects. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we as a procurement function can be those agents of change and driving new ways of working to build better relationships with suppliers, to really make that step change from being a customer of choice to a customer of delight. And we've done some work internally here at Zip. We've done a little bit of a study of our own, which is called the State of Spend. We've worked with an organisation called Prolific. We've had a look at spend across the entire organisation, from tip to toe, big spend, small spend, all across, and really tried to capture the sentiments and signals from those stakeholders that we've interviewed across the organisation. So we've gone across multiple different stakeholder groups: legal, risk, finance and procurement, across 10 different industries and over 1,000 leaders. And there's actually some pretty consistent themes that we're seeing coming from that actually very much align to this year's SRM report that Alan presented earlier today. What I want to spend a bit more time on today is actually the final point, talking around how procurement needs to adapt and what are the roadblocks that are stopping procurement from adapting and becoming those agents of change. But I do want to just touch on as well some of those earlier findings. So we can't go too far to speak about technology and not mention AI. It is front and center of everything that we're talking about today. And what that study shows us is that across the leaders of the organizations we spoke to, there's certainly a lot of optimism about AI, but in terms of readiness, that's still pretty underprepared. AI is also a massive factor around the recruitment of talent that's coming into the organization. How AI ready is our team? How enabled are they to adopt new technology? I think certainly organizations and procurement functions now are looking to get further reach of management of spend across the organization. It's no longer just the strategic spend. All spend matters, and often it's that smaller spend where most of the risk lies. So that is also an extremely important point. And then from a technology point of view, the norm now is very much of the best of breed kind of technology landscape for most of organizations. So what I mean by that is, gone are the days where everything is done within an organization's ERP system. There are multiple different solutions, cloud solutions that sit across the organization, used by those different stakeholder groups in the organization, like legal, like IT, like procurement, and like finance. But what that's driving is proliferation and disconnected systems that don't talk to each other, and a lack of consistency of data and visibility. And so we need to adapt as a procurement function around that and get ready for this new world of AI. When we have a look at the data and what we got from the feedback of our survey, sentiment from the organization around procurement, it's not bad, but it's not great. So I think there's still some significant room to grow. Actually kind of linking back to the findings from the report that Alan shared earlier today. If we look at the APAC region, I think there's a pretty good correlation to what we saw there, that 80%, or sorry, I think it was 87% across APAC was still followers as far as technology was concerned. The three biggest areas that were lagging for APAC were technology and collaboration and governance. So what's kind of stopping, and what is the inhibitor for procurement around getting to the agents of change? The biggest factor that we've seen from our study and report is that procurement is still complicated, it is still inflexible, it is still slow, it is still extremely process-driven, and there is that lack of investment around technology and talent to unlock these things. Where is that happening, and what is making it difficult for procurement to be agile and flexible, and where are we kind of spending most of our time? Well, great companies and those leading organizations, the ones that were sort of sitting at the top 2% of what we saw before from the SRM report, they have flexible talent models. They partner extremely well with the organization in a business partnering function. They have the right operating models that enables those functions to focus on things that are really important, like proper SRM, to be able to unlock value within the organization. But for the vast majority of others, most of their time is actually spent on manual data entry, checking information, reading and comparing contracts, chasing and herding the cats through the organizations to get the relevant approvals to get something done, to make sure that all the right due diligence processes are being conducted before onboarding a supplier, chasing up the contract manager to make sure they're actually performing the contract management of that supplier. That is where most of the time is actually being spent. So I think the time now is to ask that question: do we want to keep doing that? Do we want to keep relying on Excel? Or do we want to start to think about embracing technology, and particularly AI? And so Zip is the world's leading procurement agentic orchestration platform. And what we want the role of procurement to be is the orchestrators of value. Most companies are working in a decentralized operating model, so that responsibility of buying lies within the business. So we want to elevate procurement to that control tower and cascade digital guide rails to the organization for them to self-serve through the procurement process. Give them a simple digital front door to start their process, and then guide them through what the right process needs to be. creating an interconnectivity of all systems that exist within an organization's landscape and a single experience layer and a single experience journey across that entire value chain. And if you think about that from a supplier performance management or SRM process perspective, think about how clunky and difficult it is often just to onboard a supplier within your organization and the experience they need to go through that. If we kind of just double click on that for a moment, it's often sending them the wrong kind of form. There's no digital way of obtaining that information. It's engaging with multiple different risk domain owners within the organization to get all of the relevant due diligence conducted all the time. The supplier's being asked for multiple information multiple times, and they can't even get onboarded within a matter of weeks. So that is where we see the role of AI being extremely important and powerful to help us drive better efficiency and make that whole experience a lot better for suppliers. So the question is definitely going to be there, like, what is an AI agent? I think the best way I can describe that is think of an AI agent as your kind of like digital procurement intern, so to speak. AI is very, very good at doing things like finding discrepancies between documents, conducting research out in the market. It's very, very good at summarizing lots and lots of information very, very quickly. It's also very, very good at generating lots of content and relevant content as well. But like all technology, it definitely does have its limitations. It doesn't provide, a great sense of kind of judgment and taste when it's doing generative AI. It can't do very, very complex mathematical modeling. So it's about working within the constraints of where technology is strong today, but leveraging that and taking advantage of it. And when we think about the procurement process, and particularly when we think about engaging with suppliers through an onboarding process and ongoing supplier management and SRM, there is a lot of value that agentic AI can play to help automate a lot of the manual tasks involved with that process. So when we're getting information from the business, rather than someone manually validating that, we can automate that through an automated agent invalidating that intake information from the organization. Rather than having to go out and check various websites around risk data for a supplier, we can deploy an AI agent to do that for us and do that in very, very rapid fashion and bring relevant information back and then start to position the business and procurement as validators of that information. We can quickly compare contracts between an existing contract and a renewed contract in minutes, which would normally take someone hours to do. We can look to create RFP content or a scope of works document for a category we need to take market in seconds, and then leverage that as a template going forward. But what we do find is that there's not a silver bullet. There isn't a procurement agentic agent or that digital intern that's going to do it all. And so the way that we like to think about applying agentic procurement across the value chain is firstly segmenting out the work that needs to take place in a very structured, orchestrated fashion. And when we do that, we're able to then isolate the activities where we can then deploy specific targeted agents in relevant personas to then automate these relevant tasks. So when it comes to the point of onboarding a supplier, we can help to automate that through deploying an agent at that specific activity. And what we're doing here is sequencing all of the relevant due diligence activities that need to take place before you even onboard that supplier. We're creating that connective tissue and experience layer. We're bringing in all of the risk domain owners on the same page, on the same collaboration platform, and making it extremely easy for them to get the supplier onboarding process done and conduct all the relevant due diligence that needs to be done. What does that mean from the supplier's perspective? It means that they're getting the right information that they need to be onboarded within your organization. They're not being asked to answer 100 questions when only 6 of them are relevant for them. But it also means that every single supplier goes through the right process. To kind of Paul's point before, like it could be that pigment supplier supplying the paint, where the spend is so small it doesn't even show up on a spend report, but it shuts the factory down. So what we do is cast a wide net through our digital intake, and we make sure that the right process is followed each and every single time. And beyond then, the supplier onboarding process and conducting all of those relevant risk due diligence processes up front, then it's the what happens after that static assessment of the supplier? What happens on a continuous improvement and continuous monitoring from a risk perspective? Who has accountability of that? What steps need to be taken? That is where we orchestrate those steps and cascade the responsibility to the right owner within the business to conduct those. And that could be done by procurement if it's managed centrally, or it could be done by the business if they're the contract owner. And so there you see our little AI icons here is where we deploy our agents to these activities to remove the manual, to remove the repetitive. And we've pre-built these agents in these specific personas to be able to expedite these activities. Just want to touch on quickly a case study for OpenAI, who's one of our customers and one of the leaders in the AI space. So rapidly growing organization, bringing on hundreds of suppliers on a weekly basis. But their process was extremely manual in terms of the onboarding. So not only did they orchestrate out the right process that needed to be followed and made that simple for the business to follow, but they deployed 3 AI agents across their process to help drive even faster process efficiency, but significant uplift around risk management. So one of the agents that they actually deployed was a custom-built risk buddy agent that would go out and do research across 12 risk domains and bring back that information to those risk domain owners to validate and then approve. That in itself improved the cycle time there by 75% and releasing back to the function 15% more capacity. I think if we look around the room, most would attest to the fact that getting to where you need to get to and being that customer delight is not going to happen just through adding more and more resource to your functions. I'm not sure how many of you are going to be able to put your hand up and say, I need X amount of more people to do this. So we need to be leveraging technology to help us be an enabler of that and make that simpler and allow us to work smarter as a function. So now's the time. This is proven technology. We need to break free of Excel. I think it's had its day. And we absolutely need to move on. So if I can give you like 3 things to take away from at least my session today, I think the first thing would be enable yourselves, get learning, get educated around what's out there, learn more about agentic AI. Canva, one of our huge customers here in Australia, just as an example, they as a team spend and dedicate and lock out 1 hour every week as a team to go and do research and go and do some playing across AI just so they can learn about it, get immersed about it. So learning is key. Oh, apologies. I think the second piece is rethink the way you're tackling the problem and do that with new tools that are available to you through things like intake and orchestration and AI. Just reimagine things. Don't be constrained by some of the systems that you've already had today or the customizations that you've got. You can start to break through of that and think about solving the problem in a completely different way, and then make those right strategic investments in that technology that's going to help you enable that journey. So we are here for the rest of the day, myself, Jude, and Alex. If you'd like to have a little bit chat further around intake and orchestration and agentic AI, please grab us. We can show you a little bit about the solution as well. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions?
No, there's none allowed.
Oh,
No, I'm joking.
Questions? Excellent. I think as Joe was saying, I think the team is here anyway. So if there's any questions, we can ask away afterwards. We've come to a very exciting time of our session. We have a panel discussion that's coming up. So if you can please join me in welcoming Alan, Georgia, Jessica, and Winter on stage. We can start the discussion panel. Yeah, please. Excellent. So thank you everyone for being on stage with me today. As you probably noticed, we've heard from Alan, we've heard from Jess and Georgia as well. We probably haven't heard from Winter yet today, so I might just do a quick intro for Winter. Winter is a Senior Procurement Manager in categories at Melbourne Water. where she's established and led the organization's category management function, overseeing $1.2 billion in portfolio. She's got more than 15 years of experience, built a career on turning supplier relationships into engines of innovation and value. She's held a number of leadership roles, driving sourcing strategies and supplier partnership as well. So welcome, Winter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. So I'm just going to start off by saying I'm actually very greedy. So I've noted down a few burning questions that I've got myself. So I'm going to ask those first before you get a chance to ask. I'll ask those. There's a couple of questions online as well that you guys have handed to us. So yeah, we'll get to that, and then we'll open up to the floor as well for if there's any questions on the floor. So just to kick us off, SRM, from what we've seen from the stats this year as well, SRM seems to be really easy to start, very hard to stick. So I'd love to get the panel's opinion as to why that is. Alan, you can kick us off first.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I wrote this question, so I wasn't quite expecting to get that one thrown back at me either. But cheers for that, Frank. Yeah, it's interesting because we're definitely seeing people making a start, and then they get to a certain point and either executives change or organizational strategy change, that sort of thing. And often it's a CPO driven thing, or head of procurement is pushing it. As soon as they leave, it's been hard to kind of embed it into their organization. And my key thing is you've got to make it cultural. And what it says to me is actually we need to get better at getting it into the business to make it stick. And rather than a program, I loved it's not a verb, by the way, it's fantastic. Because it really should be just how the business, operates. So in terms of practical things, everyone talks about marketing about, little and often. And I think we and procurement have to do that. We have to remind stakeholders that SRM isn't about the QBR or the joint account plan or the monthly operational. It's little and often talking with suppliers, working with them, communicating, making them feel part of that extended enterprise that we talked about kind of last year. So, from that perspective, stealing from some of what marketing does, I think makes a big difference in terms of that ongoing communication. So, some of the best guys, like we're lucky enough to work with a couple of organizations. One in particular has, they have their own internal comms team. Part of their time is allocated to communicate procurement's wins into the business. And I think that's a brilliant thing. So not just the kind of deals that they're doing, but innovations that are coming from suppliers or, activities that they're doing with suppliers, that sort of thing. So their comms team spends, I think, between 20 and 50% of their time doing comms about suppliers rather than just comms to customers, which is quite interesting.
Yep. Thank you, Alan. Jessica, we've heard about from your presentation around your journey as well. So I'd love to get your thoughts around this as well, how you've made it stick at Ampol.
Oh, we're still trying to make it stick. We're definitely not perfect. I think it really depends on the buy-in that we have from the business. So we have some areas of the business who are really invested, really passionate. You saw them come to the training with us. Someone told me just today that they're still talking about the training. So they're really invested. They see the value, and that's where we're seeing the most success. Where we're struggling with to get it to stick is where procurement haven't promoted it properly in the first place. So we've lost buy-in before we even got it, and now we're trying to rebuild that. When people see it as more work, more meetings, more, more controls, more things to track, it's really hard to get it to stick if they don't see the value. So we are starting to use case studies and, yes, we get commercial savings out of doing this, but that's not what we're promoting. We're promoting the innovations, we're promoting, what else can it deliver other than just, oh, you have to do more meetings because there's, this risk and this control that we have to do. So getting that buy-in, the messaging is really important.
Yeah, excellent. That's really insightful. And it sounds like you have a really good training partner as well, so you might kind of connect them with people in the room. Georgia, we've heard a lot of great stuff that you guys have done at Toll as well. So anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the, having worked in 2 heavily regulated environments, so with the bank, there's CPS 231, 232, and with Toll, and I'm sure Ampol's the same, the Sochi legislation, the Critical Infrastructure Act, you can really use that to your advantage. So, we introduced something at ANZ around the operational contract manager framework. So it was really clear what the business's obligations were around managing a contract for a third party. And then you use like risk and audit as your lines of defence to make sure that it's being embedded into the business. So I fully agree it's all about the communication and, celebrating the victories and things, but it's also about making it part of the everyday DNA of the organisation, and that only happens if there's other functions outside of procurement measuring that it's happening.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Georgia. Winter, I know you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective, being really focused on category management. I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think quite often with SRM, what we see is that it's either we're too ambiguous in sort of what we're trying to deliver, like it's quite all fluffy stuff but nothing tangible or measurable, or we're too ambitious and we promise so much of, all this savings and we don't deliver. Quite often, I think that breakdown in communication, like I'm in all of Ampol's journey, like there's very clear framework, very clear roles and responsibilities, clear communication plan, engagement plans. You've got to be prepared and plan to actually engage your stakeholders. What's in it for them? Quite often we ask the business for a lot of things. Can you fill out this survey? Give me the data. What's your budget? What's your spend? But the question that comes back is what's in it for them? We're asking them for a lot, but what do they get in return? And bringing them on that journey. So, I think we've had some it's breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and managing, the quick wins and understanding what your stakeholders needs to get that buy-in and build that trust to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. Look, the next one is very much aligned with the theme that we have today. So, from what we've seen from the research that Alan's presented, there seems to be a gap between procurement and that end customer piece. So just would be really keen to hear from the panel's thoughts. Why might this be and how could we possibly address it? Jess, maybe we'll hear from you because we saw that you had a slide that was discussing that as well, so we'd love to hear from you.
To be quite honest, before we did some training with a very good training partner this year, we probably hadn't thought about how it impacts the end customer. So even that's been a learning experience for us, because in procurement and when we are managing these suppliers, it's very much about supply. Like we can't afford stop supply, we can't have a site shut down. The refinery needs to keep going. We've got Sochi, like we've got all this infrastructure, but like I don't think we've ever really thought, to much detail how it impacts the actual customer experience. We do supply chain mapping, but does it go that far? So yeah, for us, I think, it's kind of a new realization to us, and now, we're planning our activities for next year, so it might be a little bit more prevalent in how we do that planning and how we speak to our suppliers. Maybe the feedback that we ask for them from them might be different, to incorporate some of that customer feedback. Before this year, it probably wasn't something that we considered as much as we should.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. Georgia, we've seen how complex Toll is and your reliance on subcontractors as well. So I'd imagine this is quite important for you guys as well.
Yep, it is. And I'm going to sort of say something that's a bit left field, which is we've only started to do it this year, but I've worked with our sales team and we've come up with a number of different opportunities where I've met with the supplier's CPO and we've talked about shared challenges. We've talked about things, where could we partner on different activities? What are their challenges with the subcontracting workforce? All of those types of things. And it's really helped both organisations understand the unique challenges of each other. And it's been quite valuable in retaining customers as well as some of the early, green shoots and new business as well.
Excellent. And winter, of course, Melbourne Water customer, it's very, it could get very controversial. So I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
It is, and I think there's a bit of a disconnect with community end users and I guess procurement and also the business as well. So there's been quite a few workshops, in that community team where it is more about that in messaging to the customer, but not bringing it back into the business. So we're asking a lot, we're collecting all this data, but we're not doing anything with it. So certainly have been involved, the comms teams are now sort of trying to think more about how we communicate to the people and bringing, I guess, procurement and the business back on that journey to align on those focuses as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Winter. Alan, anything to add?
I ran a round table about a month ago, 3 weeks ago in Houston, and there were some very large oil and gas chief procurement officers there, and a couple of them didn't know who their end customer was, which I found particularly scary. So, and they were thinking internal customer. So please, when you're looking at it, make sure you're thinking about the people that spend money with you to buy your goods and services rather than your internal customers. That's not to say your internal customers aren't important, they are, but linking it back to revenue for your organisation or if you're a public sector, certainly the users of your products and services, I think is critical. So yeah, just making sure that you understand who that customer is right at the beginning is super important.
Yep, thank you, Alan. And we've seen from Alan's research as well, people continues to be a bit of a challenge. So in terms of training, capability, so there seems to be a gap between that and best practice. Just love to hear, again from the panel, why do you think that is, and how will you secure investment in these areas? Winter, we might kick it off with you this time.
I think we've all had experience of sitting through a lot of training programs that talk to us a lot and very theoretical, tons of, slides and presentations. But I think we lose a lot of our audience through that sort of stuff. And it's more about targeted training, interactive sessions, and a program that can actually give, I guess, us end users the tools to continue that legacy. And yeah, that seems to be, so I guess the pitch for us internally when we brought the right training provider on board was certainly around, we've got a category management function. It's completely new. It's completely greenfield. The business hasn't heard of it before, and we need, the tools to do our job. We need to lay down the foundation, the processes, the framework to actually start enabling us to function. So it wasn't about going to the next conference or anything like that.
Yeah. And just to check that was achieved.
Yes, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Winter. Georgia, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so look, I think for us, the big breakthrough moment was when we did training around total cost of ownership. And we did that with the business so that, because category strategies, in the traditional sense of thinking about commodity pricing in 3 years' time or what's the business strategy, but actually understanding the asset life cycle brought us much closer to the business. And we were able to then think about it more in terms of, when we're making decisions about what vehicles that we're going to buy up front, what is the disposal value, or, you know, if we're making decisions about what colour paint should we be putting on the vehicle, what is the disposal value down the track. So getting that kind of joint training together with the business, one, it improved the commercial acumen within the business as well from an operator's perspective, and it massively improved our operational understanding of what's happening. So that was kind of the breakthrough moment for us.
It's almost like stepping onto the other person's shoes and sort of understanding what each other's challenges are. That's
exactly,
very, excellent. Thank you, Georgia. That's great. Jess, we've discussed training. Anything else from your perspective? There's no more selling that's needed.
I think for Ampol, we probably made some assumptions early on that, you know, the people in procurement knew how to sell this. So we probably could have invested in training a lot earlier. We had a really comprehensive framework, and, you know, at one point we thought that was enough. Like, we roll out the document, business can read it and they can go away and do it. On reflection, we could have done that a lot better, like done that upfront training and get that capability up to where it needs to be and then implement, because now we're trying to manage these suppliers as strategic and also try and upskill. So had we done it in reverse, that capability could have been in a lot better position to deliver, you know, well.
Yeah, because I mean, procurement, we're a very process-driven function, aren't we? So
we love a controlled document. Yeah, I do anyway.
Exactly. So I think it's about almost complementing that change management with training, isn't it? That's what you're saying. Yeah, make it really effective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. Anything from your point of view?
I mean, I mentioned the 5 audiences of who you need to think about, but getting those roles and responsibilities right up front, I think, is super important before you train as well, so that it's very clear on what you're expecting from them. And I think the challenge for us in procurement is doing that for the business, because it might only be 5% of their day job, but we need to really kind of show them where that supply management element of their day job is. So I'm a big fan of also including sort of HR in your steering committee to get them on board with embedding supply management into their roles, into the business's roles I'm talking about, and then with the training side of it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So the next one here is one that's been submitted, and there was a lot of likes. So if you want your questions asked, please like the questions that you see on Slido. It's like social media. So if SRM is a great investment, why does the C-suite need so much convincing to back it? Georgia, maybe we'll start off with you first.
I think it's because it's seen as an and in addition to, so they will prioritise revenue generation or, you know, cash, whatever, over the top of that. So I think trying to be clear about the ROI on SRM makes it easier, and then measuring it. So finding a way to tangibly measure it along with as a procurement balance scorecard makes it easier for the organisation to kind of digest it.
Yeah, it's back to that messaging that we spoke about, isn't it? You know, what do they care about? You know, how do we package it? Yeah, excellent. Winter, your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely, you know, that return on investment. So I think execs always look at that bottom line and what value does this program bring. And SRM not being defined clearly is, I think Alan said at the beginning as well, like it's a tack on that the differentiation between a contract manager, a supply relationship manager, or even a category manager, and not seeing that return quickly. Relationships aren't built overnight, unfortunately, but execs seem to think, you know, I've dipped, you know, 100,000 in this, I think I need it back tomorrow. So understanding that, you know, I think where I've been very, very fortunate is I have been able to see the benefit firsthand in a previous role where, you know, at the start of lockdown, everyone remembers beautiful lockdown, you know, the blue collar industry sort of was, oh my gosh, I've lost my word. A lot of people were sort of let go quite quickly. And so when there was a stimulus package came through for state government to actually keep the industry alive. But unfortunately, there was a misalignment there because it actually created more demand than there was supply available. So that's when SRM managed to get a really good flex because you couldn't pay a supplier enough to get resources back in. You couldn't pay them enough to come to your site and do whatever. But, you know, through excellent SRM management, you know, you still got that professional treatment. We still got access, you know, to the resources, and being that customer choice, though, you still get that pick of the litter. At the beginning of lockdown was probably, you know, the biggest flex that we could have offered. So being able to feel that firsthand, you can't really explain that, but, you know, it's that long-term investment overall.
Yeah, some of those softer measures, isn't it? It's not just
you can't see it immediately, but it does happen.
Yeah. Excellent. Jessica, love to hear your thoughts around how you secured investment and resources into your program as well.
I think just to echo what Georgia said, it's that return on investment. They have to see why it's beneficial for them. You know, where, you know, there's again pockets of the business that see the value and that understand it can take time, and they're willing to, you know, go along. I hate saying journey, but go along that journey. You know, and we're still trying to get people to see it as a value add, not an add-on. Like, if it's just more meetings and more, you know, spending money and not getting something back straight away, like it's really hard to get, you know, to get it to stick.
Yep. Alan?
Yeah, it's a great question, whoever asked it. It's, I think there's a piece around sales pitch as well, because the ROI, you know, one, we've seen it in the data, it's there. And all the panel reflect that. Yes, you've got to articulate it, but the ROI is there. It's also wrapping that with a sales pitch. And I just find, you know, as an industry, we're not great at selling stuff. We're great at buying things, but we're not great at selling things. And if you were a bunch of salespeople, you would have your sales patter rehearsed, you'd practice it, you'd probably video it. We have done some sales training on how to sell to procurement. So we've seen these sales guys, it's exactly what they do. They practice their pitch, they video it, they enhance it, they improve it, and so on. We never do that in procurement. We never practice how we're selling. We never even think about it as selling. So for me, there's a bit of sales that we need in there. The other bit that I'll just add to it is I normally find that the chief executive level, first level kind of get it. They can see the difference. It's actually, for me, it's the next level down where they own the budget and it's their area. They probably own the supplier relationship and they don't want procurement messing up their great relationships. That's almost a harder sell than the executive suite because, yeah, they almost don't want us in the door. So just, yeah, working on your sales pitch for me is quite key.
Excellent. Thanks, Alan. Look, the other really popular question here is potential internal measures to assess the success of your SRM program. Anyone from the panel has any thoughts around how to do this?
Internal measures.
Yeah, internal measures.
So how we measure SRM.
Success of KPI.
I think the important thing, so I guess back to Ampol's example with the whole joint action planning. So you've got, you know, aligned objectives and shared goals and having those, you know, quarterly meetings to actually measure this is what we agreed to do, or, you know, a really good example of success for joint action planning is when you are transparent with that, you know, with your suppliers, and your supplier is happy to invest in you as a customer as well. So it's, you know, being able to meet those aligned goals, you know, and that's definitely a good measure.
Excellent.
I think also if you've got continuous improvement initiatives or value that's baked into the contract, being able to measure that and then, you know, talk about it. So it's quite easy, say, in IT to have the CIO at QBRs with key strategic partners, and usually continuous improvement is baked into those types of contracts. So when the two organisations are kind of doing the scorecard on each other and then the gap analysis together with the continuous improvement initiatives, and then that CIO is evangelising it at his leadership team level or talking about it even from a demonstrable value, then I think you can start to get a bit of a groundswell across other parts of the organisation that aren't as advanced, say, as IT in that space.
Yeah, it's almost to get some good examples going and set the momentum.
Yeah.
Excellent. Jess, anything from your experience?
So I think to echo Winter, we do have our joint action plans and we track the number of ideas and what's been delivered from that. We also track, commercial benefits that have been achieved through in-contract opportunities. But another thing that we're starting to measure is the trend of us as a customer from these suppliers. So we ask, it's a really simple, 5-6 question survey when we do our annual planning. 2 or 3 of those questions are actually quantitative, rate us 1 to 5 as a customer. So we're trying to see an upward trend in that so that we can show maybe a year or 2 ago, we weren't that great as customers. We weren't very open. We weren't very transparent. We were super reactive and we're improving.
Yep.
And because of that, we're able to deliver these action plans, all these innovations, continuous improvement, and we've also got some commercial savings to back that up.
Yeah, it's almost looking at your level from, what Alan mentioned around that customer choice status, isn't it? Yeah. Alan, anything to add?
I was going to mention using customer choice as a key measure, because hopefully over time you're improving as a customer choice. But you can certainly also use things like every interaction, and it wouldn't be operational, but certainly every strategic interaction, you could use it almost like a net promoter score on that, around those individual interactions, so you continue improving. But I think that the customer choice as a program measure is really important, and then the 360 reviews, again, but they're only for your top suppliers, and I would certainly use those. You can't use 360 for hundreds, you'll drown, but certainly for the top 10 to 20, definitely.
Excellent. I might open up the floor for questions now. Just a couple of things. Firstly, so we'll have mics, handheld mics around. So if you could, put your hand up and then, give us your name, provide your name and your organisation you work for. That'll be really helpful. The second one is, any questions around your water bills or your petrol prices, now's absolutely not the time for it. But yeah, if there's any questions around, please do put your hand up. We've got mics on the floor. Matt, I think you've got a mic, haven't you? Any questions? Yeah, please. Faye, I think Faye's got a question.
Hi, my name is Faye, Senior Supplier Commercial Manager from Metro Trans Melbourne. So, Jess, you mentioned before about making SRM stick. It might be more difficult when certain areas of the business don't see the value and they don't buy in. So I just want to ask the rest of the panel, do you have certain suggestions or very good ideas for certain business areas they don't see the value due to whatever reasons?
Run around with a baseball bat. But no, I think trust is key. So building trust with your stakeholders and understanding their requirements. So there's always low-hanging fruit around. So it is about just having what keeps them up at night and how can we align and how can we help them with that. So trust us with something small and it will grow. So that's always been, I guess, an easy way in. So no one's going to, if I come in today and ask for your bank account, you're not going to give it to me. So, but over time, we can build to that. So we can start with your mother's maiden name, all that sort of fun stuff. But yeah, it is that trust element.
Thank you, Winter. Georgia, anything from you?
No.
wait, sorry. I would just say it's also about listening and understanding the business's pain points. And it can be as simple as, you know, I don't like the way the travel provider loads the hotels, you know, but getting trust and credibility with the travel provider actually extends beyond that into other more strategic areas. So I think just being really alive to what their business challenges are, bringing in a supplier to help, you know, an existing supplier to help co-solution together, because I think in any of it, whether it's a large transformation or just transforming the relationship, all three parties, the supplier, the customer, and your organisation, have to be aligned together.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, is it Dave? Oh, Brad.
Thanks all. Brad from RACV here. You went into detail about the case studies and trying to demonstrate values to the senior management and track them sort of benefits. How do you go about doing that? Obviously, you don't want to use Excel. How do you go about just tracking what the benefits you've got throughout the life of the contract? Do you use certain technologies? Do you use dashboards, analytics? Just basically, how do you go about compiling all of the good stuff that we're doing so that when we're doing that elevator pitch to the business, we can say this is what's come from the life cycle of the contract, not just your upfront sourcing?
Great question.
Alan, do you want to pick this?
Well, I've got to be a bit, you know, without sort of selling supplier base too much. Please come and talk to us about our technology. Yeah, certainly we have that in supplier base, but frankly, it's just another one of the KPIs around the relationship is benefits. So using performance management, so you're tracking value, and you can break that into different levels of value, but certainly using it like a KPI measure. And so, yeah, we've built that into the technology as we do it. So that's how we approach it. Normally, in parallel, you'll have what is a savings, so defining what those savings are, because often, you know, especially in SRM, you'll get hard savings, but then you'll also get access to innovation or access to the A team. And you want to track all of those, but sometimes it's quite hard to put a monetary value, which is where you're, you know, if you're doing it as a KPI, you can do your 1 to 5 rank, all that sort of thing. And in innovation, if you're early in it, it's generally just it's simple metrics like lead indicators, number of good ideas submitted. As you get more mature, you can then start tracking the value that have been implemented. But initially, when you start, you'll just start with the lead indicator points that you track.
I know there's various maturities. So anyone else from the panel has anything to add?
We use a system. I think you might know it. I think we have a joint system. So we use it to track our benefits, but we can drill down into those benefits, whether it was delivered through sourcing or in contract. We've also started using that system, a source to contract system, for the innovation. So we've started tracking innovation ideas and what's progressed to an actual, you know, action plan and an implementation. The action plans that we have, you know, for the annual plans and everything, that's still on Excel. And we still have, you know, our survey responses aren't systemized yet. So at the moment, it's kind of a combination, and we try to present it through like dashboards. Yeah, so it's kind of a hybrid at the moment between a source to contract system and Excel and dashboards.
Yeah, so we certainly know a system that can help with action plans as well. So. Anything else? Okay. Oh, yes, we've got a question here as well, please.
Thank you. Manny from LCA Victoria. It got mentioned earlier about the percentage of benefit which you can unlock beyond the value of the contract. What are the sort of areas where you're seeing that as quick wins, or areas where value you're unlocking across in terms of trends beyond the contract value? Thank you.
That's one. Yeah, so look over the 17 years of doing this, the numbers have stayed relatively consistent between 2 and 6% over and above the contract, although the leaders are getting more. A lot of that is, so these are new value. So it might be that between you and the supplier, you're able to come up with effectively, and some of them are kind of similar to stretch sourcing, where you might come up with a new product that better services your customer, but it's also less expensive. So it is quite similar. But the other metric that goes with that is the numbers are between 30 and 50% of all deals done don't translate to the bottom line. So not only does supplier management help sustain or help grow it, but it should also sustain the deals that you've done. So if you think about that, between a third and a half of what the sourcing team have been implementing don't actually translate, and that is lost because either the business stakeholder spends the budget somewhere else, so for some reason the implementation doesn't happen correctly, or products or services change and all savings that you might have negotiated get eroded because you're now looking at something new. So the two kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, the new value is generally quite similar to your strat sourcing kind of activities, like new products or opening up new markets, that sort of thing.
Alan, while we've got you, we've got a question online as well. Which industry is leading when it comes to SRM practices? I think that's in the book as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we looked at it in the book. Financial services, so interestingly, it's regulated industries. So aerospace and financial services tend to be kind of more. Now, in previous years, it's been fast-moving consumer goods. So your Kellogg's and your Mars of this year. But I think as margins have been squeezed, it's been more the regulated industries that have kind of stepped up. So when I drill into financial services, because as from a State of Flux perspective, globally, that's our biggest sector that we work with, probably driven by London as well. But there is still a confusion in financial services between the R and SRM being risk for them. So yeah, so although they are kind of scoring better, it's not quite as where it should be. I should point out though that financial services is still only 12% leaders. So even though they're doing better, there's a whole lot of room for improvement everywhere, really. And that's probably a key message. If you can get good at this, as you can see from the panel today, the benefits and the advantages of being good at this are huge. So that kind of first mover advantage is definitely there. But as we can also see, it's not that easy to get good at it.
Excellent. Any other questions on the floor? Yep, we've got Tim.
Tim's got a big voice.
Get the steps in. So it's what we've been talking about today is typically, we've got a hub in the centre for procurement where COE, and then we've got a spoke with out in the business. It's a lot easier to manage and upskill in the centre for competency management and commercial acumen. I'd be interested in some of your challenges or success stories for the spoke in increasing the business's commercial acumen.
Really good question. Anyone want to tackle that one?
That was Tim from ANZ.
Again, we're still have challenges. We organised a training session where the business was invited and they cancelled the day before. So, they had other priorities and they thought, oh, that's procurement's job to do it. So I think, where we have success is where people are in the business have seen it done well, whether it's in Ampol or whether it's at their previous organisations, and they're able to be promoters with their team and like champions within their team. But we definitely have, we don't have everyone on board. We have people who don't want us to sit in on meetings because they've got such a strong relationship, or people that, especially, our refinery is quite siloed. So it's really hard to get them to look outside of, like risk or performance or, avoiding a shutdown and think about other things. So yeah, we're very, very much still trying, and we just keep pushing. Like, it's that consistency for us, which we're starting to see pay off as well, is just, staying, engaged with them, keeping the messaging consistent, applying consistency, and hopefully one day we'll get them to come along to the training and everything.
It's almost shifting from the have to want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not easy. Like, you can tell someone, oh, we've got to control and this is why we have to do it. But like, I've been at other organizations where we have that, and yes, people will do it, but like begrudgingly, like they'll do the bare minimum, but just to get by and check the box and move on. Like, we want this to be valuable and not just a compliance thing. I'd rather someone come to a session and want to do SRM well because they see the benefits, rather than being like, well, you're going to get audited and you have to. Yeah.
Maybe a maturity thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
My parents still ask me to have more fruit, and then as you grow up.
You got to make them want to do it. Make them think it's their idea.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to anything contribute around?
It's definitely a very real problem. And, Melbourne Water likes to make things so easy that we run through different procurement models. So we have centralised, decentralised and centre-led all in the one space. So, unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of success in that external decentralised function because we haven't really cleaned up our own backyard yet. So, I've got nothing to offer you, but just to say that I share in your grievance.
I'll just add to, I think it also depends if you're a low margin business. So some of, at Toll, we've flipped between EBIT, a drive for EBIT, or, managing cash. So the business actually feels like they are quite commercially astute, but they kind of will apply what they do for the customer and then acquiesce to the vendors. So it's like trying to teach them that, there's two sides of the coin, and we need you to be thinking of it both ways. But it is challenging when they actually believe they are quite commercially astute when maybe we may feel that they're not.
Excellent. Alan, anything from you?
I still, it's a great question, Tim. For me, there's still a piece around how we sell it. We talk about having a messaging house where you have kind of your overarching message, which is for the corporate, but then for each business unit, you will have what motivates them, what's their key business drivers, and it won't be the same. You talk about spoke, and that could be a business unit, but it equally could be a department. Like, what motivates your legal team to have partnerships with law firms versus your marketing team and so on. Each of them are going to be slightly different. So having your kind of key messaging tailored to each of their drivers, which means you've got to understand what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to, what they're measured on, so that it does align and it's seen as a help rather than an and. Because there's nothing worse than I'm from head office and I'm here to help. No one wants that. So it does have to be kind of aligned to them and how that you're going to achieve their goals and targets. So where I've seen it done well, it has that. And then you try and get sponsors in each of those business units or areas. And sometimes that's not easily done, but perseverance kind of pays.
Excellent. You can please all join me in thanking the panel for such great insights. And then Alan, I think you've got some concluding remarks for us.
Have you got the... Oh, and if Frank hasn't pushed training enough, there's even an ad there for it. Firstly, a huge thank you. I know these days that we try and pack them full of data and information, and we've thrown all that at you. So huge thank you for great questions and interaction. I'm also happy to answer any questions there. If you did the survey and you haven't yet had a benchmark, please contact us and book it in. And also all the books will be available just outside the door after this. A couple of things for me, and I sort of love hopefully you all love the content as much as I did, because I loved it in terms of, one, getting us to think about the customer, but two, also looking at some of the great tools that are coming up from Zip in terms of the AI, and from Aon in terms of risk, and thinking about how those play into your business case. One of the things that is becoming increasingly clear, and it's in the book, is the need to get kind of your CEO or certainly your executive team on board. And my foreword in the book talks about that and the need. There was a study a few years ago, pre-COVID, that highlighted that CEOs only spent 1% of their time with suppliers. Now, I know post-COVID that's gone up, but it's still not anywhere near where it needs to be, as we know. So think about your business case, and frankly, I think now is almost the perfect time to be in procurement. We've got risks, global risks happening. We've got AI, and making a big difference. It's time to actually show how we can add value and get that business case into your CEO. You couldn't kind of ask for a better time. We'd love to show you what we're doing in supplier base and how that's kind of been developing. Especially, it's come up a few times around performance management, relationship management, surveys online. All of that's built into the technology. So again, grab one of our team and we can schedule some time to at least show you what we're doing from that. We've mentioned the training. So yeah, there is a whole curriculum. I think we have now over 50 training courses. And I know we talked to you about SRM, but we also have category management, strat sourcing, and the whole gambit. So there is 50 training courses, and we do partner with SIPs. So some of those are accredited by SIPs as well, especially the Showcase SRM training. And of course, please share the report. The more people reading the report, the better. It is written so that you can take it into your CEO or into your wider business stakeholders. So please feel free to use that. There are hard copies, but also there is the ability to download soft copies as well from there. So thank you very much. It's been awesome to have you here. And please talk to us. There's at least 6 of us from State of Flux here. There's a couple from Aon. There's 3 from Zip. So please talk to us, and we'd love to hear where you're going in terms of your SRM program. So thank you.